This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, the Browns injury front heading into this big Week 5 game versus the Washington Commanders. First, no Nick Chubb, right? I know a lot of people are wondering if Nick Chubb's going to play. No Nick Chubb. He's been ruled out. He's practiced all 3 days since coming back off the PUP list, and I think they were always going to let Nick Chubb get a full week of practice in before they were even ever going to consider giving him limited reps in his first game. So here's how I think this is going to roll out with Nick Chubb, and I think things are going in the right direction with Nick Chubb. He's going to continue to practice. He practices, I believe, limited, at least in individual drills all week. He looked great in those individual drills. Go to Cam Justice's Twitter if you want to see more video of what Nick Chubb looked like going through those drills. He looks fantastic right now. If the Browns really were in a panic and they really needed Nick Chubb back this week, I am under the feeling or under the impression that Nick Chubb could have played this week if they really, really, really wanted to rush him back. But because they're not going to rush him back, because they want to trust a process here for him coming back, they're going to allow him a week here to practice, and then they'll play him next week. Or that's at least my read on it, right? That's not guaranteed. That's not what they said coming out of Berea. Let me be very clear on that. So no, Nick Chubb's not going to play this week. But the news on Nick Chubb is actually pretty good. Remember, I told you earlier this year, the Browns internally thought if Nick Chubb plays at any point in October, they would consider it a huge win. And we're talking about early October, him coming back and being full by like the end of October if he can stick on this timeline. Another player that the Browns won't have on Sunday, unfortunately, is Jordan Hicks. He left the game last week with the elbow injury. He seems to be out for the time being. Nyheim Hines also coming back off the PUP list, practice all 3 days, will not play this week. And then James Hudson has been ruled out for the Browns, which is concerning given that the Browns have injury issues. And this is going to be a very interesting week because depending on the news that we get before this game, right, when the inactives get rolled out, the Browns could either have a completely healthy offensive line for the first time all season, or they could have a completely mangled offensive line, more so than they've ever had. Like, it's truly a huge change of outcomes that can happen between this week, because right now you're looking at Jet Wills and Jack Conklin. They both practiced this week, so they practiced 2 times this week actually. So there's a chance that Jack and Jet come back and you have your starting right tackle, you have your starting left tackle in the game. Ethan Posick, there's a chance that he comes back, right? Wyatt Teller won't be back. Zach Denser will be in there. Wyatt Teller is on IR, but you would have 4 out of the 5 projected starters for the Cleveland Browns offensive line, depending on where you think DeJuan Jones sits in that. For the first time all season, potentially, if these guys all come back. Also, a big piece of news for the offensive line is that Michael Dunn, who also came off the PUP list, much like Nick Chubb and much like Nyheim Hines, he's actually questionable for this week. And I thought that there was a good chance that he'd be questionable and maybe even possibly play this week because, again, his injury wasn't as severe as Nick Chubb's or Nyheim Hines' injury. So there was a good chance he gets back in there, and that's important because he can play backup guard. He usually plays on the left side, right? Left guard, left tackle is the 2 positions he's played only as a Cleveland Brown. But I do think that he could probably flip over to right guard and be able to play right guard if he needs to. If Zach Zinter starts to struggle, he can also be a really useful, eligible tackle piece since James Hudson is not going to be in the game. Like, it might be messy trying to get these guys all out there at the same time because they haven't played together much to start the season, but we cannot deny when you look at this offensive line, they need to get healthy. Now, fortunately for the Cleveland Browns, the Washington Commanders aren't super healthy as well. Brian Robinson, their starting running back, is a game time decision. I don't believe he practiced for 2 days, right? He was a DNP for 2 days. He might have been limited today on Friday. The full news on that hasn't come out yet. But last we heard, and from the early press conferences coming out of DC, Brian Robinson is a game time decision. Austin Eckler, their other running back, also cleared concussion protocol. So depending on how things go, you're going to play Austin Eckler at the very least if you're the Cleveland Browns. Brian Robinson might be in there. He's the type of running back that's giving the Browns problems, right? That big-bodied, physical runner that's giving the Browns issues. He likes to run inside specifically, which is also giving the Browns issues. But when it comes to the Browns' run game issues, it's been all over the place. It's been inside. It's been outside. It's just going to take a better overall effort from this team to be able to solve that. So, we'll see what happens here with Brian Robinson, but I don't expect a backup running back being in there to really change the outcome for this game when it comes to run defense. I think that's going to be entirely dependent on the Cleveland Browns defensive line if they want to show up this week or not, because they haven't showed up for most the last month here. Noah Brown is also ruled out, and so is Clelin Ferrell, their edge rusher. He's ruled out. Look, the Commanders don't have a great secondary, nor do they have a great edge rush, but they do have the strong interior, right? They got Jonathan Allen, they got Deron Payne. They have a lot of really good players on the inside of that defensive line, but the edge and the secondary has struggled for Washington. So also, my bad, I almost skipped the biggest piece of news here that came out. David Njoku might play. Like, legitimately, there's a good chance that he plays. He did a press conference today, which is a good sign. Usually you don't have an injured player do a press conference unless you're pretty sure they're going to be able to come back and play. David Njoku said that he feels good coming off of this high ankle sprain, and that he'll leave the decision to if he plays or not up to Kevin Stefanski and the medical staff and see what they feel like is the final decision that gets made there. But really good news there, getting David Njoku back. And look, these injuries that you could potentially get back this week, I mean, it's huge. We're talking about your starting tackles. We're talking about your starting center, and we saw how much not having your starting center in there hurt. Even though Nick Harris didn't do a terrible job, he just made 2 gaffes in that game that you just can't make. Specifically, the one gaffe was the missed snap on the final drive. So you would love to have Ethan Pocic in there. You feel like if Ethan Pocic was healthy for that game, you might have won it, right? Just a veteran player. Maybe he doesn't hold on that big time throw to Amari Cooper. Maybe he doesn't snap the ball early to Deshaun Watson. Because again, I was watching this game, and every time Nick Harris was in, it was like you could just tell Deshaun something was wrong with the cadence that Nick Harris wasn't understanding there. That wasn't a problem when Ethan Pocic was in there. So getting Ethan Pocic back is a big deal. Getting Michael Dunn back is a bigger deal than I think a lot of people understand, because Michael Dunn's a pretty good backup guard, right? So if you want to put him in there for an inexperienced Zach Zinter and let Zach Zinter get back on the bench and put somebody who, if you're Jack Conklin, if you're Ethan Pocic, you have experience playing with on that line that desperately needs some chemistry to get put together. I mean, that's going to help you with stunts and twists. I know we've been complaining about the Browns not being great at stunts and twists. Well, they're going to work well against inexperienced players. Browns went out there last week with some very inexperienced offensive linemen. We're talking about Nick Harris, who hasn't played that many games in his NFL career, definitely hasn't started in that many games in his NFL career. You're talking about Zach Zinter, who's literally a rookie, and then you're talking about DeJuan Jones, who still hasn't played more than like 17 games in his NFL career. Yes, those guys are going to be very susceptible to getting stunted and twisted and all that, but all of a sudden you flip that right side out and you have Jack Conklin back, who's a 10-year vet. You have Ethan Pocic out there, who's a veteran center. You have Michael Dunn, who's a veteran backup guard. Then all of a sudden I think a lot of those communication problems, a lot of those more strategical errors are going to be just fixed by just experience being there on that side, and then having Jed and Joel back there on that left side. We know Jed struggles with stunts and twists. We know Jed struggles to improvise as an offensive tackle. I'm not saying all of it's going to go away, but just having Jed back, having the starting offensive lineman back, and then also potentially bringing back David Njoku, he probably will be on a limited snap count. But having David Njoku there with Jeff Swain, who I thought did a really good job blocking, I think you have a lot of solutions to kind of temper down the pass rush, and I think you'll get a good performance by the offensive line, and you'll give Deshaun Watson time, similar to what he had against the Raiders, right? Like, he got more time against the Raiders than he had in any other game. He had more clean pockets against the Raiders than he had in any other game this season. We're talking about 61% clean pocket percentage this week versus a 55% clean pockets percentage. So, like, a legitimate, tangible evidence that they were able to block better. When they blocked better, Deshaun played much better. Now, if they can live up to their end of the bargain this week by getting healthy and block better for Deshaun, hopefully you think that the level of play that you saw last week can be carried over to this week, or at least something similar. Two, they're not even talking about how getting Jack Conklin back, having Michael Dunn in the run game, he's a really good run blocker, getting Ethan Posick back in the run game, getting Jed Wills back, like getting your starters back will also have a positive impact on the Browns' ability to run the football. And I think if the Browns can run the football, this offense is going to be able to move the ball well, too. You look at those opening drives that Kevin Stefanski does so well with. A lot of those drives do well because the Browns can run the ball in those drives and get ahead of the sticks. Like, I think that's going to be a super important piece to this going forward with this team. But that's my thoughts on who's getting healthy, why it's important that the guys that are getting healthy are getting healthy. And again, man, this is a must-win game for the Cleveland Browns, and it's not necessarily a must-win game for the Washington Commanders. So that's the advantage that the Browns have coming into this. They need this game much more than the Commanders need this game. And that needs to be tangible on our television screens when we watch on Sunday from a mentality standpoint. The Browns should come into this game understanding they cannot, losing is not an option. And I'm interested to see if the Browns show up like that, which I hope they will, and have good belief that they will. How does Washington respond to that? How does a young team with a young quarterback respond to that? So that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.